Hello everybody. In today's video, I am going to be talking about some stuff called the current day. And what is going on in the current day, I have no idea. All I know is it's a new calendar. Hey, did you know that if there was only 300 days in the year, every year would end on October 27th? And if you're on a leap year, it would end on October 26th. And that's if you had 300 days of the year. Why is it that way? Because in the regular traditional Gregorian calendar, we have 365, but if we had 300, all I'm saying is that October wouldn't have so many days. It wouldn't have 31 days, but it does. It does, generally every year, at least to my knowledge. Anyway, it isn't really the point of this video, but I did want to mention it because whatever. But I'm just posting this video just to post. And I'm just talking literally just to talk. So yeah, if Asmongold comes over and react to this, it's not the end of the world. Hey, maybe I could make a video specifically targeted towards Asmongold. But, it's whatever. I'm gonna let that go for now. But let's see. The three big no-nos of you can only talk about it at certain times, which are sports, religion, and politics. Three big no-nos. That's probably what you're thinking about right now. I mean, you could talk about it, but I mean, it's a very, very common thing. You would think that there would be other subjects people would like to talk about outside of that, but no, not really. Not really. They're like, oh, you shouldn't talk about that, but then meanwhile, it's the only subjects they talk about. Like they don't focus on the main thing they're saying. Kind of like Asmongold. He says he's a gamer, but he talks about politics a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. He's pretty based with his political views. I actually like his political views, mostly. Like, he is a bit of extremist, He's not a, he's not somebody I would say that is pro-free speech, really. Like, he is to the extent of that he believes it, but he's not like a free speech absolutist, which is kind of a bad thing, because what he doesn't know is that a free speech absolutist just means somebody who is, like, really into freedom of speech. It doesn't necessarily mean, like, oh, they just allow terrorism or whatever. That just means you're allowed to say, hey, there's terrorism going on, or hey, I'm a terrorist or something, But, or, this thing or that thing, you're allowed to say bad things and you're allowed to say good things. Just because arresting someone because they said slurs, or just arresting someone because they said something, or just arresting someone because, ooh, they criticize regime. Shut your bitch ass up, okay? You're allowed to say whatever you want. You shouldn't be arrested for saying words, okay? The idea of hate speech is basically, again, ooh, criticizing the regime. That's basically what it means. Alright? Now, it is rude when you say stuff like that, but guess what? A lot of things are. But the whole idea of hate speech is really just an excuse for government to, like, enforce their laws. And I made a video earlier prior to this about the difference between freedom of speech and Europe and the U.S., like the difference between the countries in Europe versus the one nation of the U.S. There are many nations and many countries in Europe. Well, there's just one USA, that kind of thing. Anyway, yeah. Asmongold, he does say stuff like, oh, just arrest them whenever they do this or that, Like, for example, there was like a recent video or whatever, and the thing is if this guy ruled the country and he was in like some random foreign country where there was like some big crazy regime where they were really strict on how they went, and Asmongold was their ruler, I would not be surprised. He would just basically be any other strict ruler to me, you know, if it wasn't for the way he is. You know, if he wasn't an American, he'd probably be like that, you know? Think like that too. And then on top of that, he's like, it's hard to explain. He's both anti-Jew and pro-Jew. And what does Jews have to do with anything with it? For some reason, like, I get that you might not like Israel or something, but the thing is why is it so popular, but yet at the same time, the same people who say that are also pro-Jewish? Like, okay, so do you hate them or do you not? You know? And you might go, oh, I just hate them. I just hate them. You know? Mind well being a Jew. Now, I'm not an anti-Semite, okay? And I am neither pro-Jewish either. I'm just not like one of those folks that are like, oh yeah, everybody's got to be anti-Jew or everybody's got to be pro-Jew, you know? Like, because then it's gonna create conflict. Like, it creates conflict to be pro-Jew because not everybody's a Jew, but it creates conflict to be anti-Jew because there are people who actually are Jewish. Now, excuse me for my shirt. I kind of had a problem. But it does really make you think. And, you know, I'm not supporting of Palestine either. Okay? Because no offense to him necessarily, because I don't know him personally, but he kept saying stuff like the Free Palestine or whatever. Like, he agrees that he doesn't like the people going after cops or whatever, or the cops going after just random ass people sometimes, where they'll just, like, execute them for no reason or whatever. But he also doesn't like those crazy people that are, like, anti-ICE and they're, like, pro-Palestine. You know, Asmongold, I'm going to say this once because we're both American. If you're truly American first, like American maybe only really, just know that Palestine is not our ally. In fact, they supported 9/11, and they did it in a way that for this country and the context is pretty unforgivable, in the sense of, like, if I was the government or something, I'd probably not try to make them ally, because it's like, oh, let's make your direct enemy your ally by making them even more of your enemy. You know, that's basically what you're doing. You're basically saying, replacing the Taliban with the Taliban. I don't support Israel, Hamas, or that Palestine group. You know why? Because if you support, you know, Israel or Palestine or whatever, and you are a U.S. citizen living in the U.S., you're basically saying that you don't hate the police, you want to be the police, okay? You're not saying that, oh, yeah, I want to get rid of the authority. No. You're not mad because there's actual authority. You're just mad because you're not controlling the authority, you know? Especially these anti-ICE people. They're not anti-government. They want to be the government. They're just not under the power. And that's what, you know, things like what they call Trump derangement syndrome, but what they really should just call it is power derangement syndrome rather than Trump derangement syndrome, because it's not only specific to Trump, you know? It should just really be like power as in like religious power or political power. Like, if there was a person that was like, oh, I'm anti this, but then they're doing the same thing because it's their group doing it, you know, you would say that that person is a hypocrite, you know? That's a form of hypocritic belief, okay? It's basically a hypocritic power, you know? Like, they'll get mad for when, say, Trump or Kamala or whoever the hell does this thing, but then as soon as they're someone that they agree or that they do the same thing, oh no, it's based. Oh no, it's right. Oh no, it's correct because they're the, I don't know, right form of Jew or right form of Christian or right form of Muslim, you know, or Hindu or non-religious or something. And even in non-religious communities, even in atheism, there's still that, oh, you're the right kind of atheist, especially if they're new aged atheist and new atheist or new aged atheist. Basically, they're like Reddit atheists before Reddit, you know, like they're that kind of people, just slap a generation back. They're like the OG Reddit atheists, basically, you know. And hey, Asmongold, if you're watching, I do like your channel. I do subscribe to your channel. I mean, I have a separate channel that I watch it on, most of your content on, because I purely just mostly use this channel for releasing content. But I am subscribed to your channel on this channel, but it's just more of like support of you. But I do have a separate channel where I just like watch your content. But you do sometimes, like, for some reason, sometimes you'll like post a video that'll either be kind of short on some topic that is like really massive or something, but then when there's like some random video that somebody posted that is like 10 minutes long, somehow you turn it into an hour. I don't know how you do that, you know? And I'm not saying you're constantly pausing every time. I'm saying every time you pause, you're spending like 10 or 20 minutes on each pause, you know? So it's like, what are you gonna do, you know? Anyway, I'm glad the fat positivity movement is dying. I'm glad that movement is basically dying out, because I remember when it was getting really popular. Did you know that movement has been around since the 70s? The 1970s? Yeah, that long ago. Since, like, I don't know, maybe 1975 AD, they've been around for that long. Or maybe even longer. But still, they've been around for quite a while. But the only reason why they gained popularity is for two reasons. One, because it was making all the companies that would make you fat bank. And two, people thought, oh, you're supporting minorities. Fat bitches are not a minority, okay? Like, if this was, like, say, 1621, they would be picking potatoes out of the ground, and they would be worshiping the sun or something. I don't know what else to say to you, alright? Because that's just what it would have been. That's just what it would have been hundreds of years ago, back in way before Thanksgiving, on the year of Thanksgiving or something. But, like, regardless, I'm still here. I'm still here. Spider-Man shirt on. You like my Spidey shirt? Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Spider-Man, Spider-Man shoots a web. He's a crick. Na 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 na. You know, ooh, Spider Pig, Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig does. Can he swing from a web? No, he can't, 'cause he's a pig. Watch out, here comes Spider Pig. You know, like I wanted to do that. Or, ooh, here's another one. An apple a day keeps a doctor away. Eat too many, you're asking for trouble. Your tummy aches, and then you overdouble. I remember that thing, but I don't remember exactly how it goes. You know, that kind of thing. But another thing I want to say is, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. That was the original saying. That was the original saying for sticks and stones. But guess what? Now it's words will always hurt me. That's what it's turned into. You know, they'll do tone policing. They'll say, oh, no. You're being the rude one. You're being the awful one. Well, doing the very thing they claim to not do. Now, don't get me wrong. You may be a person who does tone policing, but the only difference is they'll still emit it, but they'll emit it like doing the same thing, but they'll blame it on you anyway. So if you do something wrong, they'll blame you. But if they do something wrong, they'll also blame you. You know? Like, that's just how it is. Like, if you do something wrong, of course they're gonna obviously blame you for doing something wrong. But they act like they're perfect, or they act like, oh, I have to be the morally right one. You don't have to always be on the morally right side to be the good guy, okay? You can be the actual good person and be wrong, you know? You can be wrong, you can disagree, you can have agreement, you can be right, you know? You don't have to be this wrong, you don't have to be this right, you don't have to be this way or that way. Because they're like, oh no, I can do whatever I want. But then the second when you do the same thing I just did, no. It's instantly wrong. Even I have a problem trying to do this because of my own ego. You know, like even I'm having a problem trying to figure this out. Same thing with my parents, same thing with my siblings. But the only person that doesn't really have that is my dog. That's why I like my dog. Because even though he's a sinner too, if you want to say dogs are sinners, I don't know if you consider that to be whatever, but still, he's a dog. He's a fucking dog. Beat that shrimp. Beat that shrimp. Oh, the gods of glory. Whatever. Anyway, what else? You know, it's very hard to think of something. Tell me. Say something you want to say it right now. I don't care if you're Metatron, I don't care if you're fucking whoever the hell, or Asmongold. Here's a video for you, I guess. So, tell me something. Tell me your biggest thing, like your biggest, like, thing that you want to tell somebody for, right now. I don't care if you're live streaming, I don't care, whatever the fuck. Tell them something. Tell them something. It's November 17th, 2025 at the time of recording this video. At least while I'm recording this video. I don't know when you're watching this. This could be in fucking 20 years or something. But Karens are still Karens, okay? They'll try to hide themselves in normal society. They'll try to cocoon under the cultural risks of whatever they're in, you know? They did that with they tried to do that with the pagans. They tried to do that with the Jews, the Muslims, the Christians, what do you call them? The Hindus, the Buddhists, the Sikhs, or whatever you call them. The fucking, I don't know, I'm running out of religions to think of. The atheists, but they're not really a religion. The Shinto, they don't really consider themselves a religion. I mean, same thing with Buddhists. They don't really necessarily consider their religion to be a religion. I mean, it basically is, but they don't really consider it to be one because, I don't know, they don't really worship God, so there's that. I mean, there probably is God in Buddhism, but gods in Buddhism, but, like, I mean, they don't really view themselves as a religion, you know, that kind of thing. It's more of like a collective of probably religions, I guess you could say. I don't know. Anyway, what else? There's atheists, like I said earlier. A lot of other things. And then there's sports. Okay, we went from politics to religion to now sports. But just remember, politics and religion and in sports, there are Karens everywhere, okay? There are male and female Karens everywhere. And most of those Karens come from either actual Karens or they're Karen themselves. Basically, they were either raised as a Karen or they became a Karen. Like that kind of thing. And it's very, 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 very hard to get a Karen, regardless if they're a man or woman or whoever the fuck, to really change their mind on anything. Like, the only time they change their mind is if you prove them wrong in such a way where they think they made it up. Or even if they know that, they'll still be like, nope, 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 nope. Help me, but do it. Like, I'll follow these rules, just have them in my way. Like you can be religious, just be my religious, Like they're that kind of people. Like, what the fuck? I'm still that. Like burning in the grave. And speaking of the grave, there's a lot of graveyards everywhere. All I gotta say is, yeah. They say that, grave, like, you should get into the, what do you call it? Grave home, not grave home. The memorial home, I think it's called. Something like that. Memorial home? Funeral home. That's the word I'm looking for. Funeral home. They do tell me that funeral homes, like, you should get into the industry of funeral homes. And I said, nah, man. That's a dead industry. Anyway, onto the subject we were going to talk about, and that is sports. Finally, I talk about sports, a thing you may or may not understand, okay? But it could go to any sport. It could go to chalkball. It could go to handball. It could go to soccer. It could go what I call football in the United States. It could go baseball, basketball, wall ball, your mom ball, your dad ball, me ball, you ball, fucking gay ball, I don't know, beach ball, body ball, fucking, what else is there? Frisbee golf, yard hockey, ice hockey, cricket. But I'm going to mostly focus on some of the things. Did you know that the Lions were getting good in 2025 for a while? I don't know if they won any Super Bowls in the 21st century, but you can let me know. Anyway, Kansas City Chiefs lost to the, what do you call the Bravos, Denver Bravos, back when they were still called the Kansas City Chiefs and the Denver Broncos, or whenever you're watching this. Like, they're still called that right now, but in the future, I have no idea if even the league exists, or even if you know what a sport is. It's a game. How I would define a sport, it's a physical game that you play, where you can get physically exhausted, but whatever you physically do, like, you have to achieve whatever, like, whoever's better at a certain physical goal more than their opponents, whoever either does it less or does it more, whoever's better at doing that specific thing. Whether that's a team or an individual player. Regardless, whoever you play against, whoever wins or loses or ties, that is specific to your sport. And it's just some form of physical activity where you do that. Whereas esports, what I consider that is a mental activity, a mental game, where you turn that physical activity into a game. And not just a game, but a competition of who will be the best. And whoever wins whoever the winners are, or whoever the winner is, they get a trophy. Okay? You're not like how I was raised. You're not gonna get like a special, oh, you attended award. I mean, I did get that when I was growing up, but I didn't really get that when I was in, elementary years, because that just wasn't really a thing back then. It only really became mainstream to do that in recent decades, long before I was born. But even then, it didn't really catch on where I lived, at least personally. It didn't really catch on, or noticeably, at least to me. It didn't catch on until I was like 7th or 8th grade, 6th or 7th grade, I could say. But anyway, sports is a really big thing where I live. And unlike other countries, there are countries that are like really sport heavy. Like, for example, England is a really sport heavy country, but usually when you have a sport heavy country, it's towards one specific sport. Like, I don't care who you are. You would know that if there is a sport heavy country where they're mostly known for sports in some way, like they're really, really big in the sports world, it's usually towards one sport, and that one sport being whatever the dominant sport in the world is usually at the time. And currently, at least time of me recording, the most popular sport in the world is what we call soccer. But a lot of Europe and a lot of parts of the world tend to call it football. But it's not like only the U.S. or only U.S. and Canada, that call it soccer. There are many different parts of the world that call it soccer. In fact, there are some parts of the world that call it kickball. There are some parts of the world that have their own original name. Like Italy. They have weird, original names for it, Hell, even England also has some original names for it. And the funny thing is they still call it soccer over there. And what do I mean by still call it soccer in England? Well, it was actually the British who invented the word soccer. Okay? It was them, alright? It was invented by poor folk, and basically they just kind of used it to separate from, they called it association football. That's how it got its name. But they also called it soccer because they wanted to separate it from rugby, like that kind of thing. And because of it, or ruggers, kind of sounds familiar, but they just did that for that reason. And so because of it, as it got more and more popular, it got associated with America because the term football got associated with it. But they're like, oh yeah, it makes sense to call it football because you kick your foot with ball or whatever. But that logic doesn't really make sense in every sport. They say, oh, you have to make the sport based off of how you count, or based off of how the sport is played. Not necessarily. There are some sports that are completely named after, somebody's name, for example, or something. Those kind of things. Like, for example, there's a dying sport now, but it's called Jester Ball. And Jester Ball was, that how it's got its name, was from a man named Mr. Gesture. And Gesture really liked to play this game, so he named it after his last name. That's just what it is. Some people just do that. But generally speaking, since it makes sense to them, that's what it is. But who knows? Maybe in a couple of decades, don't get me wrong, soccer will probably always be this really big popular sport somewhere in the world. But I doubt that it's going to stay number one forever. No sport has ever done that. Ever. You could say, oh no, but my sport could be dominant. Yeah, it could dominate for the next couple of seeable future, but it's not going to dominate forever. Okay? One day, whatever sport it may be, is going to start dominating at one point in time, and it's going to kick out your sport, quite literally, in popularity. Maybe it will just be some variant of your sport, so technically, yeah, you could say that. But the difference is it will probably, allow you to use your hands. It will probably allow goalies to not really be a thing, because I never really understood goalies, like it never really made sense to have goalies. Like I get it, like you need to protect your side of the field, but it never really made sense to have goalies, because it's like you don't really need a goalie to protect your net. You just need players to protect your net. If I were to modify the sport soccer, or football, as a lot of the world tends to call it, not all the world, but a lot of the world tends to call it, or some variation of it, or sometimes, again, their own original version with it, like how some Italians say it, or how some English even sometimes say it. They'll call it the footy, or sometimes they'll call it hacky sack. I'm not even kidding, because they'll confuse it with other kinds of games. Anyway, what I would do is first get rid of the whole, like, what do you call the refs having so much power, because they don't really, they shouldn't really control that much. The only thing they should really control is, if it's game day, they should be able to control, like, oh, you have to wear, your basic stuff, or it's like, when they start the game, when they end the game, a little bit before the game, a little bit after the game, but generally just revolving around a game of some kind. If whoever the referee is, and they should have, how they have it's very common in soccer to have like a pyramid system where they have like a what do you call it? It's almost like the nominations, but for who's better. I know that's not the same, but like you get the idea. It's a, what do you call it? A depromotion. I'm not thinking of the word. Oh, promotion and relegation, or they have a relegation system, and you keep getting better and better and better. And if I were to have a system when you're on the bottom, any team that they want to get rid of or have, they can have, but it's the league where they have the most amount of teams. And on top is where they have like 8 or 4 teams of the time, And if you play neutral, you stay on that league. If you play worse, whatever league you're on can go down 3 leagues down. So you're going to have to go skip that league, and then whatever is 3 leagues down from below your league, you're going to have to go to that league, at maximum. It could just go 1 league down, or it could just stay there. But generally speaking, if you do bad, or if you do majorly bad, even if you're exceptional, you're going to have to go at least 1 or 2 leagues down. And at most extreme, go 3 leagues. And the only league that can make you go more than 3 leagues down is the top league. Whatever the top league is, where they have the best of the best of the best of the best players, where you have to be like extremely high scoring, extremely high playing, extremely high focused, extremely officially recognized in that league. You have to be like really interconnected. You have to be like a team that can really deserve it. Be a league that, I don't know, maybe happens every 4 years or whatever. The kind of like the Club World Cup kind of thing, where they have it every 4 years before the actual game, that kind of thing. And then what I would do for modifications is just get rid of the goalies. Like, you can still play as a goal, like you can still have like that player, who would traditionally play goalie in regular soccer, but in this modified version, goalies are not a separate player necessarily. They're a part of the team, so there's nobody really guarding the net. The only time you can really guard the net is when you're over on your side of the field, so you can't just stay on your side of the field the entire time and be like, oh yeah, I'm acting as a version of a goalie. The only time you really need to like go over there is if your opponent like has it. So otherwise, your net is not protected. Okay, there's no goalie to really protect it. So you're gonna have to like constantly go through the actions and stuff like that. You can run, you can walk, that kind of thing. And on top of that, you don't have to only kick with most of your body everywhere except your hands. You can use your hands too. You can use your hands to throw the ball in the net. As long as it doesn't go out of bounds, it connects as valid, like it can be still generally viewed as valid. It can still be in play. As long as it's in play, it still counts. All right? All the ball has to do is touch touch the line. And that's when I mean touch the line, I mean like as long as the ball touches the net or something, or it's in that box, not the entire ball, as long as the ball gets like past that line, even if it's just a little sliver, okay, and it doesn't even go inside the net necessarily, then it can count. It can count. But generally speaking, for most regular goals, unless it's like a last minute goal or like what do you call it, a sudden death, like that's for sudden death goals. And sudden death is when nothing really counts. If it goes out of bounds, then your opponent wins. If nobody scores anything, then there can be a tie. But in the version that I play, there will be sudden death. Basically, it's if anything happens at this certain amount of time, whoever wins automatically wins. And unlike soccer, where it's like 90 minutes, I'm going to have it like 2-minute 20 sections, where it will stop the clock for a break, and it will obviously stop the clock when the game ends. But the clock will stop right the second that break time is halftime happens. And so the halftime will be like 10 minutes long, and then after those 10 minutes, you bring on whoever. And unlike soccer, where you're limited on like how many times you can put in like players or whatever, switch in players, in this version of the sport, in this variant, there would be no limit. There would be no limit of how much you can switch in another player. You just have to let people know when you do it. You have to like do it in periods of timing, that kind of thing. You can switch it in whenever you want, and you can have timeout. All right, but timeout is only called if there's like a big emergency or whatever. And then there's purple card, or card that shows like some will be purple. If I were to do that, some would probably be purple, but I would show like I don't know, some sort of card where it's like a danger symbol, that kind of thing. And once you see that danger symbol, it means either one of three things. Either that means there's a potential threat, there is a threat, or there's something going on. Like there's something currently going on, like a natural disaster, there's somebody crazy in the place, or it's just like for whatever reason they want you to immediately stop playing the game, and then they'll go out that, and then the game automatically ends by default. Okay? It ends by coach declarance, which basically means like permanent timeout, which basically means hey, there's something going on and we need to leave. That's basically what it means. Or immediately stop. They should have a separate one where it's like immediately stop the game, but don't automatically leave. That kind of thing. And it is whatever, man. And then when the game ends, and if there is a tie, then generally speaking, that will be fine. They're like ties are allowed. It's just the difference is if it's 0-0, it's a tie where nobody wins. Okay, if it's an actual 0-0 and time runs out and everything, the extra time, bonus time for that, then nobody wins. But if there's a tie, like a regular tie, say like a 1-1 or a 30-30, whatever it may be, whoever was the last to score is the winner during that game. Like, it doesn't matter which half it is. Whoever was the last to score in that entire game, that team or that player wins. And I say player because it could just be solo in this version. That would be interesting because they always talk about, who's the best player? Why don't you just have a league where it's just solo players? That kind of thing. But no. We have to make it teams, sure. Like, sure, you want teams. When it just means, current player that I like at the time. That kind of thing. But it is what it is, that kind of stuff. And when the game starts, what I would do is I would just have the ball in the direct, middle of the field. And then, that circle? I would have the 2 star players or the 2 main players of both teams stay on their side of the team, obviously. Green team is with green team and red team is with red team. And then make the 2 players stay at the 2 ends of the circle, that big circle that they would have in traditional soccer. And then when the whistle blows, basically they both start running towards the ball, so that way they can either give it to their team or try to, score in a goal. And then whoever scores the most goals, normally in a normal game, if it isn't a tie, but only ties will count as who wins at the end of the game, if that's what happens at the end of the game, so there's no true total tie. But for if it's you have even 1 point more, even if it's just 1 point or more, you still win. Okay? You either win by tie or you just win. Alright? You win by game. Win by tie means you were the last one to score, and then win by game means you fully, legitimately won. You were actually better. And, if you win by tie, you will get lowered by a league. But if you win by game, you can get promoted more, or you can stay in that league if that's the highest league you can be in. That kind of thing. That's what I would do, personally. And then I would probably change up a few more rules. But generally speaking, it would just be a game where it's you can customize it for whatever reason, where it's customizable enough to fit, modern day technology, but just the same enough where it's just basically the same sport, just modified for whatever time it's currently in, so the era can fit and the teams and the players can be specific to whatever league or sport you play, that kind of thing. Sport, it's called, everything. And that's what I would do. That's just what I would do, And hey, maybe even have a version where it's not just men. It's disabled will have its own separate section still, because you got to make it fair. But I'd make the rules in such a way where both men and women can play in that sport. So that way, at least, you don't have to make a separate league just for that sport, You would make the rules played in such a way where, made in such a way, not necessarily played in such a way, but put in practice in such a way that when you enforce your rules, it basically makes it equal for both genders, you know? Like that kind of thing. But since this is professional, they would basically all be playing the same, you know? They would have to all be at the same strength, you know, give that equality. Because you might go, what? But they're women. Yeah, but if you modify the league, if you say, hey, all men and women who play in this league have to be at this level in order to play, it's going to be an even playing field for everyone. You know, even if women wouldn't naturally be strong. Because the whole point of being a sports player when you have a mixed gendered league or even a one-gendered league is to basically have all the players be able to play at the same level, and then however the team views itself is specific upon the team and the player, you know, yada, yada, yada. But, you know, it should be somewhat easy to get off the team, but it should be a lot easier for the coach or the employer to, like, kick out the players. And same thing with the coach. Like, the coach could get easily kicked out or whatever. That kind of thing. But if not, then they can keep going. But if so, or if they just retire or quit, then there you go. Anyway, yeah, that's my whole thing with the sports. Like, it would be, like, that version of soccer would be so universal that it would be, like right now, it's pretty hard to challenge the current version of soccer. But if I made that variant become, like, a real big thing, that sport that I am describing that you currently call soccer, or the version you're more familiar with, that specific game, that game is going to be basically ceasing to exist, you know? I don't know what else to tell you. And yeah, you make it a lot more popular. Or instead of having a net, what you could just do is just have your end of the field, you know? Whatever your end of the field is, you kick it to your specific ending of the field. That kind of thing. And if it hits out of that way in between the lines, the lines of the whatever, it wouldn't be count as out of bounds. The only time it counts as out of bounds is if you hit one of those line markers, or if you hit out of the other spots, you know. The shorter ends are gonna be like your entire goal. So if you make it to that end of your field, you would get a point, and then they would for every time a point is scored, they would reset it. So basically, unless it's out of bounds, you would have to put the ball back in the middle of the field and then start it all over again. Like, immediately as that happens, put the ball back in the middle of the field, unless there's an accident or something. But still, you get the idea. And yeah, that's what I wanted to do. And this is a very, very long video. And I don't know if this video will get released since it's so freaking long. But that's what I'm planning to have. And yeah. I don't know what else to say, but that's what I would do. And I would also, I don't know, just like allow people to play their game. But once it's over, it's immediately over. There's no more playback or anything. But once it ends, unless there's a direct tie or something, if somebody has a game where they score even 1 point higher, that game automatically, by default, ends. If it's not a tie, it will automatically end, okay? And then you'll have a 5 to 10 minute extra time, and if nobody wins, that game automatically ends, okay? But you get it? It will be 2 halves of 20 minutes. But once that game is over, it's over, okay? When it is done automatically, by default. Alright? You can do your anthem like 30 minutes prior, maybe, or something. Like that kind of stuff. And then, I don't know, it's just whatever. Maybe have your commercials before they go on. And then, it is what it is. But I don't know if I would do an anthem. I don't know if I would do the national anthem, because it may not, that game may not, unless they're playing against countries or they're playing against teams that are from another country, it wouldn't make sense to have the national anthem out there. But yeah, I would have my league be named like something like, I don't know, something like a league or an association. So, I don't know, like, not major, but, what would be a good name? I'm thinking of what would be a good 3-letter thing, a 3-word thing, or a 2-letter thing. I don't know if those kind of leagues exist, but how about mixed gendered Bodyball Association? So it would be MBA, not NBA. Or how about just gendered, not gendered, how about, I don't know, People's Bodyball Association, PBA, something like that. And I'm trying to make this video over an hour long because I've never really posted a video over an hour long. So I'm just really trying to get that there because whatever, the PBA, the sport that can become anything, even the impossible. That kind of thing. If it exists, it has a history, and it would make it like really honorable and make it really big deal. And at first, it may start small. It may even start like, oh, it's just kind of that thing. But then constant tradition after tradition and constant team after team. So it would actually matter and everything. It would be more about the sport in the game, less about the money than how it looks. It would be a part of it, but it would mostly be focused on like the actual game in general. And 90% of the league would just be like 90 or 80% in the league would just be people and people playing the game, people watching people play the game, that kind of thing. And then the other 20% is maybe like advertisements or things or whatever. But I would make it like, so that way anybody can access it. It's just if you want the ad-free version where we have ads in like the halftime part. Like there are no ads in the 2 halves, just the ads like sometime before the game and sometime after the game, but only really ads, like most of the ads are going to be played during that 10-minute section, that kind of thing. And it would be a lot easier, And for all the lesser leagues, the smaller leagues, they'll play like different days of the week. And like I'll have, I don't know, 7 different types of leagues, that kind of thing. Like this one plays on this day, this one plays on that day, this one plays on that day. And then they'll have like a bunch of different games that are played like for all these teams or whatever, and they'll all play at different hours, you know, that kind of thing. Like for each league, they'll play on like maybe one specific day, and then, each game that's still played plays on a different hour. But basically, so that way they'll have like a 24/7 game that's always playing, and then the off season depends on the specific league. Like when the big major leagues play, they'll have like a small on season or a long on season, but a small on season. And as soon as they have a tie, they're not going to have like, oh, we're going to play another game. No, as soon as that game happens, it's done. That game is done. And then whoever wins the big trophy is whoever they decide. Whoever's allowed to. Like I said, if it ends on a tie and all the time runs out, whoever was the last to score wins the trophy, but maybe gets depromoted. If they win a tie, they get to probably stay on the league or even get up promoted, even if it's just 1 point, that kind of thing. And referees will have a regulation and promotion as well, and so will the audience and the stages and everything, that kind of thing. But it will just be mostly just a thing where you'll basically get 24/7 games that are actually played, and then, I don't know, maybe have a copyright system where it's like, oh, you can own the copyright of who gets to show this game, but it can only last for so long. I would say probably a year, where you can say, oh yeah, you get to own it for a while, but then once you can't own it anymore, it's permanently in the public domain. So once you release that game to the public, they can do whatever. And then the highlights, and when I mean own that game, I mean whoever gets to show the highlights, you get to keep that copyright of the highlights. But the game itself, you have to publicly show it. You have to like allow it. That kind of thing. Like post it on your social media, the full version, so that way people down the line can like save the game. Because we all know that games don't have to be watched live, but people do like to watch it live because it's more in the moment kind of thing. But I would design my sport in such a way where, yeah, it is special to watch it live, but it's kind of like watching a pre-made video live, Like you can, but you don't have to. Like you have the option to watch it live if you're like a devoted fan, or if you're like somebody who likes to watch it when it gets released. But it's like when it's going on. But it's like how would it be? How it be when you watch something and it's like the release day of a movie or whatever. Like it'd be that kind of thing. Like it'd be the kind of thing where once it releases, it's like a big thing for a while, Like you should be able to watch it whenever you want, Like you don't have to watch games live. Like that would be the idea where you don't really have to watch it live. It's still valuable to watch it live in the sense of there will still be a big audience for it. I just mean you'll also get a chance to just rewatch the game, And it will feel like, regardless if you watched it live or not, you'll probably feel like you're in the moment. In fact, that's what I do with sports now. You don't have to watch it live. You know that, right? I should make a separate video for that. I should make a video saying, hey, you don't have to watch sports live. Sports live, you know that, right? Like you don't have to watch the news live, but yet some people do. Some people like to watch a lot of other things live, like a live stream, but you don't have to watch it live, especially with sports. It should be more of an option, but it's still culturally that way, is what I'm saying. Now, don't get me wrong, I won't get rid of the whole live thing, but just view it as like, oh, this is when it aired, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I do kind of like watching sports that aren't live sometimes too, because I get to actually see the whole game, that kind of stuff. But whatever, man. Anyway, I'm going to end this video here because it's been over an hour long. So yeah, thank you for watching if you did. And yeah, just remember, stay ugly.